right, friends, today's April 9th. It's Thursday. I'm going to continue reading with Chapter 5. It's called Not Funny. Right now I'm trying to multitask and make macaroni and cheese, so we'll see how long I get through the chapter before it starts boiling over. The tall guard escorted Jack and Annie out the back door of the hall and into a walled courtyard. The other ambassadors were already entering the palace quarters on the far side. Jack was so frustrated he barely noticed the crimson and purple flowers, the bubbling fountains, and the dazzling water pools in the courtyard. All he wanted to do was get back to the treehouse. Their mission was done. He tried to think of an excuse to get away. "Annie," he whispered. By now, Annie was walking ahead and chatting with the guard. "Where do the royal women and children live?" she asked. The guard pointed to the palace quarters on the left side of the courtyard. Jack noticed veiled women peeping out from behind the arched windows. Annie waved at them, but the women moved out of sight. The guard escorted Jack and Annie out of the courtyard and through a quiet passageway. The passageway led to a chamber lit with brass lanterns hanging from the wall. The guard handed them each a silk coat, a sash, a pair of pointy shoes, and a jeweled turban. What's this?" asked Jack. "Gifts from the Great Mogul. You may change in here," the guard said. "Oh, thanks," said Jack. The guard pulled aside a curtain to reveal a small space like a dressing room. Jack and Annie stepped inside, and the guard pulled the curtain shut. Jack whirled around to Annie. "This is awful," he whispered. "We have to get out of here." "Calm down," said Annie. "We don't have a choice." She rubbed her hand over her purple silk coat. "I love these clothes." "Oh, brother," said Jack, sighing. But he took off his hot jacket and pulled on his orange coat and tied the sash. He definitely felt cooler in the soft silk coat, but the puffy pants made the coat balloon out around his waist. "I really hate this," he groaned. "Don't worry, we'll leave right after the parade," said Annie. She tucked her braids under her orange turban. "Do I still look like a boy?" "You look ridiculous," said Jack. "We both look ridiculous. We have to make some excuse so we can leave." "Don't you want to see the parade?" asked Annie. "Not with a person who kills you if you speak to him or bow the wrong way," said Jack. "Maybe we won't have to bow again," said Annie. "You're missing the point," said Jack. He put on his blue turban. Then he took off his buckled shoes and pulled on the pointy slippers. Annie looked at him and laughed. "Not funny," said Jack. "Well, don't forget, if we run into trouble, we can always drink the potion and make ourselves small," said Annie. "And get squashed by the Mogul's guards?" "No, thank you," said Jack. Annie laughed again. "Not funny," said Jack. The Imperial Guard pushed open the curtain to the dressing room. "Come with me now," he said. Jack and Annie followed the guard out of the chamber and down a hallway of the palace. "Remember, don't talk to the other ambassadors," whispered Jack, "and never, ever say anything to the Great Mogul. Promise?" "Don't worry. I know what to do," whispered Annie. Jack and Annie followed the guard through another chamber and out to a wide, shaded balcony. The balcony overlooked a river and sandy shore. The Great Mogul stood near the railing of a balcony, with Imperial guards surrounding him. The ambassadors stood in a row behind them. Jack was relieved to see that they, too, were wearing pointy shoes and silk coats that stuck out. Jack gestured to Annie to stand behind the ambassadors. He hoped none of them would try to talk to him. He was relieved to hear trumpets suddenly blaring and drums booming. All the men stepped forward to watch the parade. Musicians came first. Hundreds of them marched in formation down the flat sandy shore between the palace and the river. Some blew long golden trumpets. Others beat drums tied around their bodies. Dozens of flag bearers followed the musicians, their red and yellow banners waving in the hot, dry wind. After them came row after row of tall, elegant horses with golden bridles. Some were dark gray, others were copper-colored, milk white, or midnight black. 100 Arabian horses, an Imperial Guard announced to the ambassadors, the most beautiful animals in the world. Jack glanced at the Great Mogul. The ruler was coldly watching the parade. Next came carts pulled by white oxen. Riding on the carts were cheetahs with tan fur and black spots. They wore golden collars that glittered in the sunlight. 100 cheetahs, announced the guard, the fastest land animal in the world. Then came rows and rows of elephants kicking up a sea of dust. They looked like a fleet of gray ships. "100 elephants caught in the wild," said the guard, "the largest land animal in the world." The elephants wore gold chains and silver bells around their necks. The tops of their heads were covered with fancy fringed cloth. On their backs were straw carriages with riders inside. "Oh, wow, elephants," said Annie, her eyes shining. "Shh, we can't talk," whispered Jack. Elephants, oxen, and horses all stepped in time to the beat of the drums and the blare of trumpets. Suddenly, the music was interrupted by wild shrieks and bellows. The Great Mogul, his guards, and the ambassadors all moved to get a better view. Jack and Annie stood on their tiptoes to see what was happening. Jack could see that an elephant had broken out of line and left the parade. Guards were struggling to capture it. The elephant had reared up on its hind legs, and its rider had tumbled from the carriage on his back. The elephant was making a terrible noise like a screaming trumpet. "What's happening? What's making that noise?" said Annie. "An elephant," whispered Jack. "Oh no," said Annie. Jack grabbed her by the arm. "Don't say anything, don't do anything," he whispered. "Think of Penny." I hate it when animals are hurt," said Annie. She pulled away from Jack and slipped through the row of ambassadors. Jack moved after her. "Annie, come back," he whispered. One of the guards saw Annie heading towards the railing where the Great Mogul stood. He quickly stepped in front of her. "Excuse me, sir. I'm worried about that elephant," Annie said in a low voice. "What's wrong with it?" "She tried to escape," the guard said. "They're capturing her now." "What's going to happen to her?" said Annie, trying to look around the guard. "She will be punished," said the guard. "What? Why?" She has failed to show respect for the Great Mogul," said the guard. "What?" Annie said. Annie, Jack warned. But Annie didn't seem to hear him. "That's crazy. She's just an animal," she said to the guard. Her voice was fierce. "Annie, quiet, please," said Jack. The Imperial Guards and the other ambassadors were looking at Annie with alarm. Worst of all, the Great Mogul was staring at her too.